On a late October evening in 2024, Natasha Flynn-Farrell received an unexpected notification on her phone. The moment she opened it, her world fell apart. It was her mother's video doorbell, and there was a man outside her door.
And on that fateful night in October last year, Natasha had also watched the Ring doorbell and must have watched and listened in horror to her mother's address being broken into.
All Natasha could do was watch and listen as the frenzied stranger broke in and sprinted up the stairs to her frail mother's bedroom. Medics had only ever seen injuries like hers in victims of high-speed traffic collisions. But who was this man? Why target someone so defenceless? And as he left a trail of chaos across this small Welsh town, just how long would it take police to track him down? Hello and welcome to the Little Shop of Crime. My name is Steve, and in store today is one of the most truly shocking stories to emerge this year. Few violent crimes are harder to stomach than those where the victim is one of society's most vulnerable. A child, someone with a disability, an elderly person, those who can't fight back. This is one of those stories. It's the case of Cathy Flynn. Rhyl in North Wales. Throughout most of the 20th century, this town was a thriving seaside resort. But now, behind its faded coastal charm, Rhyl ranks as one of Wales' most dangerous towns, where escalating rates of violence, poverty and substance abuse cast a long shadow. But what you'll also find there is a community with resilience and stories beyond the headlines. It's home, just like it was for one of its most vibrant residents. Cathy Flynn. To those who knew her, she was Cathy, but to her family, she was Queenie, the matriarch, and the glue that held them all together. Cathy was born in Liverpool in 1955, the third of 8 kids. Years later, she met Mick, and the two married and had 3 children of their own, Catherine, Natasha and Michael. In 1999, the family moved to Rhyl, and there, Cathy built a life brimming with love. She doted on her children and her grandchildren, and surrounded herself with people who adored her. Cathy was happy. Every photo of her captures this. The biggest smile, warm and genuine. And by all accounts, she had one of those homes with an open door. You couldn't walk in without being offered a cuppa, or even a big plate of something hot and homemade. After her husband's death, Cathy eventually settled on Cavendish Road, and she loved it there. The garden out back was her pride and joy. A little haven where she'd sit for hours and just watch the bees and the birds. Neighbours called her a ray of sunshine. Friends knew she'd give you her last penny if you needed it. And her kettle was always on. In recent years, Cathy's health had begun to decline. She'd always been fiercely independent, but serious illness and limited mobility meant she relied more on her family, especially her daughter Natasha. Natasha wasn't just her carer, she was her best friend. The two were inseparable. If she wasn't at home, Natasha was usually at her mum's, or pushing her around Rhyl in her wheelchair. Every Thursday without fail, they had dinner together, and they were already planning something special for Cathy's upcoming 70th birthday, a milestone she was excited to reach after a tough few months of hospital stays and recovery. Cathy had lost even more mobility, but by October she was finally getting her strength back. She was a fighter, but Natasha knew her mum was still vulnerable, so she kept a close eye on her. Even when she wasn't there, she could see who came to the door, thanks to her mum's video doorbell linked to her phone. October 24th, 2024 saw a mild autumn evening in North Wales. Every night, Cathy would call Natasha. It was a routine they both cherished. They'd natter, exchange love yous, and wish one another good night. That night, Natasha sat with her phone in her hand, waiting. But she would never receive that call. She received something else instead. At exactly 10:27 PM, Natasha received a Ring doorbell notification on her phone. She pressed it, and in her own words, that was the moment her world crumbled. This is what she saw. At this point, the audio cuts off in the released footage. What began as confusion for Natasha had very quickly turned into panic. She could hear the man shouting, "Where are the keys?" over and over at her mother, who screamed for mercy and begged, "Please don't." Then came the loud thuds, as many as 15 of them, heavy and unrelenting. Understandably, Natasha was hysterical, and she was utterly powerless to help. All she could do was watch in horror and scream through the doorbell speaker as she witnessed the attack unfold in real time. The intruder was inside the house for just 1 minute before he quite literally threw himself back out through the window. Two minutes after arriving, the man ran away into the night. 2 minutes that Natasha said felt like 2 hours. She immediately dialed 999. Police kept Natasha outside while they investigated what had actually happened in the house. She prayed her mother had barricaded herself in the bathroom, that the banging she'd heard was him trying to get through the door. She told herself it was going to be okay, that hopefully it wasn't as bad as it had sounded. But what they found was worse than anyone imagined. Cathy was rushed to hospital, barely alive. Doctors couldn't believe what they were seeing. Every bone in her face was broken, the kind of trauma they'd only encountered in victims of severe road traffic collisions. The stranger had dragged her from her bed and stamped on her head and neck with full force, no fewer than 15 times. He then left her dying on her bedroom floor. It was impossible for Cathy to fight back. The attacker was powerfully built, and she was only 4 feet 10 inches tall, weighed just 110 pounds, and was so frail she relied on a stairlift and walking frame inside the house. When Natasha saw her lying there, tubes coming from her mouth, she begged the nurses, "Please, do anything, whatever you can to make her comfortable." There were so many questions. Who was this man? Why Cathy? Was it a targeted attack, mistaken identity, or a burglary gone very wrong? Cathy's door was dusted for fingerprints. Nothing. The windowsill though, that was a different story. Prints on the flat surface outside matched someone climbing in through the window. They were sent for analysis. Natasha's 999 call was the first one in Rhyl that night, but it certainly wasn't the last. Once he left the scene of the crime, Cathy's attacker went on a rampage, leaving a trail of chaos across the town. And as Cathy was being rushed to hospital, a flurry of panicked calls poured into the station. The man broke into several more homes that night, covered in blood and dirt. One resident was sitting at home when she suddenly heard breathing coming from her kitchen. She got up to investigate, and there he was, standing in her doorway. The woman was petrified. She asked who he was, and he showed her a gash on his palm, told her he'd cut himself. She begged him to leave, and he did. Crime scene investigators later discovered underwear and socks in her washing machine. They didn't belong to anybody who lived there. Another nearby resident called police after confronting the same man in his house that night, standing in the kitchen, just staring vacantly, totally naked from the waist down, blood all over his hands, legs and t-shirt. When he was told to leave, he lunged for the homeowner's phone, a brief tug of war, then he stole it and vanished into the night. Between 11 PM and 12:30 AM, the assailant was caught on numerous CCTV cameras, running across town wearing nothing but a t-shirt. His erratic behaviour and appearance had unsettled dozens of local residents. His missing clothing, drenched in blood, was later recovered by investigators. He'd tried to dispose of it in multiple locations, a doomed effort to cover his tracks. We're not looking at a criminal mastermind here. This wasn't exactly a carefully planned, methodical series of crimes. This strange man drew an awful lot of attention to himself. The whole thing struck police as some form of rampage rather than a targeted attack on Cathy. But who was this man? Investigators now had fingerprints waiting for a match and a chaotic trail, but still no name. Well, that's where Natasha comes in. She said the doorbell footage was sickening to watch, but remarkably, she also remembered it had to play out for it to be saved before she dialed 999. Somehow, she had the presence of mind in the most harrowing of moments to keep the video running, preserving the most crucial evidence. Natasha sent the video to the police. It was shown around the station, and within minutes, 2 officers recognised the man on Cathy's doorstep. They'd arrested him the very night before for breaking into another house in Rhyl, just streets away from Cathy's. The man in the footage was Dean Mears. A 33-year-old man, a father, and a 6-foot-tall scaffolder, Mears had no history of violence, but a long record of drug abuse. He'd previously served time for dealing, back in 2021. Investigators traced him to his grandmother's house in nearby Kinmel Bay. North Wales police were lightning quick. They'd cracked the case and were beating on his door less than 5 hours after the attack on Cathy. At 3:06 a.m, they swooped in, tasers drawn.
Dean, come out, come out. Get down, get down!
Hold, Daddy, hold! I'm coming out. Put your hands where you can see him. I'll lie on your front. Lie on your front. Lie on your front.
Yeah.
Hands to small your back.
Excuse me. Dean, this moment in time is 0306. You're under arrest on suspicion of attempt murder, robbery and burglary. Do you want to say anything that may harm your defence? You do not mention when questions so which are in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand the caution?
Yes, please help me. Help me.
The reason for your arrest is prompt and effective, prevent further harm to other people and prevent further damage.
Yeah, now before we move him. Hold him here for a second, Dad.
Yeah, I'm just going to roll him onto his side though.
My mind's not telling me right. Please help me.
I'm just going to roll him onto his side.
Yeah.
Going to roll with. Stay there. Stay there.
Please help me. Help me, please. Please help me.
Cathy Flynn clung to life in the hours after the brutal attack, but sadly, her injuries were simply too catastrophic. It was a fight she couldn't win, and she passed away roughly 24 hours later. Even her pathologist was shocked that such devastating trauma had been inflicted by a person. She had no chance of surviving. Cathy was a remarkably strong woman to have held on for as long as she did. Her family believe she held on until they reached her bedside, before she slipped away, surrounded by people who loved her. Their Queenie was gone. And with her death, the case changed. Dean Mears now stood accused of murder, and he was questioned the following day.
We've got this incident on Camden Road at number 60 where Cathy Flynn's been murdered. She was found with significant injuries and she sadly passed away as a consequence of those injuries. There is some Ring doorbell footage there which had been identified from by 2 police officers. Can you explain that to me?
No problem.
We discussed yesterday that your fingerprint is on the window to that address as well. Can you explain that to me?
No comment.
That is a very short period of time as seen within that footage. So the footage only lasts a minute and a half where you attend the address. You gain entry to the address. Catherine's assaulted within the address, and you leave the address. Explain that to me.
No comment.
Did you intend to attend at 60 Camden Road
No comment.
to murder Cathy Flynn?
No comment.
As the evidence mounted, fingerprints, doorbell footage, blood-stained clothes, police also received a call from a friend of Mears. She'd seen him on the night of the attack, right outside her house, half naked and covered in dirt. According to her, he was pale as a ghost, and looked like he was in a trance. But it was what he said that alarmed her most. "I've done something stupid. I've hurt someone." He knew what he'd done. There was little room for denial. And so, faced with all of this overwhelming evidence, Dean Mears eventually admitted to causing Cathy's fatal injuries. But he claimed to have no recollection. He blamed a cocktail of ketamine and cannabis. As for remorse, he showed none, whatsoever. In a preliminary hearing, Mears offered a manslaughter plea on the grounds of diminished responsibility, but he denied murder. This was a decision that meant Cathy's grieving family would have to sit through a full trial, forced to hear every shred of horrific evidence and relive every moment in excruciating detail. The trial of Dean Mears began in early May of 2025 at Carnarvon Crown Court. He maintained throughout that he had no memory of that night due to the substance abuse. The defence painted Mears as a timid man, afraid of his own shadow even. They focused on his mental state during the attack, argued that he'd been suffering from PTSD after being stabbed twice during his spell in prison. But a doctor for the prosecution told the jury there was no significant mental disorder at the time of the attack, no psychosis, nothing that could explain away what Mears did that night. He knew what he was doing because he tried to get rid of his clothing, evidence he knew was covered in Cathy's blood. And something he said during the doorbell footage sealed his fate. Where are the keys? This indicated robbery was the intent, and so the prosecution presented the case as a burglary gone wrong. They relied heavily on the doorbell footage. Cathy's family wept quietly as it was played in full to a stunned courtroom. Dean Mears took the stand in his own defence. He answered 25 questions about that night with the same 3 words: "I don't remember." The trial lasted 9 days, but the deliberations were only 4 hours, and on May 15th, the jury delivered their verdict. Dean Mears was found guilty of the murder of Cathy Flynn. This verdict was met with cheers from Cathy's family. Justice at last. Mears appeared back in court on June 20th, 2025. His sentence: life, with a minimum term of 28 years. The judge called it a savage and merciless attack on a very small, frail woman who posed no threat. Natasha bravely addressed her mother's killer directly. "You, Dean Mears, you can't even look at me. You didn't just kill my mum, you killed a part of me. You, Dean Mears, took the light out of my life. I want my words and my face to be etched into your brain. I hear those thuds to her head, face and neck every day. It replays in my mind in slow motion. Thud, thud, thud. That moment was the vilest, most sickening moment of my life. How could you do what you did to my mum, my Queenie? You should hang your head in shame. You are nothing but a coward. I will never forgive you, Dean Mears."
Today I welcome the sentence of Dean Mears, who's been convicted and sentenced for the murder of Cathy Flynn in Rhyl. And on that fateful night in October last year, Natasha, her daughter, watched the Ring doorbell and must have watched and listened in horror to her mother's address being broken into. Smashed entry by Dean Mears through the front window. He ran upstairs, brutally attacked her in her bedroom, where she should have been safe. Dean Mears has pleaded not guilty to murder. He gave a no-comment police interview and led the family through a 9-day trial, and they heard some harrowing evidence. And now ultimately it's led to the conviction and sentencing today. But I really want to pay tribute to how they've conducted themselves in the public gallery, listening to what they've listened to. And I hope today's sentence is some solace and enables them to start to move forward with their lives.
Following the trial, Cathy's 3 children shared a moving tribute. "We miss our mum's beautiful face and smile, her kind heart and words. She was the glue in our family. We will never again get a call, hug, kiss, or another conversation with our mum, our Queenie. We weren't ready to lose one of the most important people in our lives. Our mum, she's gone forever." Natasha still waits for the phone call from her mother every night, before she remembers it isn't coming. Imagine lying alone in bed and a frenzied scaffolder crashes through your window and sprints up to your bedroom. What a terrifying thought. And Cathy was so vulnerable. In Natasha's words, she was like a little doll, and he was a monster and a coward. With cases like this, I'm always conscious that loved ones might be watching. If you had the absolute pleasure of knowing Cathy, I'm so sorry. My deepest condolences go out to you. Thank you so much for stopping by and making it this far. If you found this video informative, I'd really appreciate if you give it a quick like and considered subscribing for more. It helps me keep covering these cases and sharing their stories. And hopefully, I'll see you again next time. Take care.